Hey everyone, welcome to my channel English for All Reasons Good, based on the CBSE guidelines and syllabus. Together, we will aim for high score through smart learning, optimum utilization of time, and less stress. So let's get started. Today, we are going to revise the chapter Hack Driver by Sinclair Lewis. This is part 2 of the chapter. In part 2, I'll be beginning the explanation from page number 50. In part 1, I have done the explanation till page number 49, along with the questions. So now we'll be beginning from page number 50. So here is page number 50. So till here we have read that the hack driver, he takes the narrator, the lawyer, to 4 places and they are looking for Lutkins, but they are not able to find Lutkins. So as they were going from one place to another, it was already 1 o'clock and the lawyer, he felt hungry. But he says that he did not regret at all that they were not able to find Lutkins because he had enjoyed the ride thoroughly with the hack driver. Now we will read what happens after that. So let's read that. How about something to eat? I suggested. Let's go to a restaurant and I'll buy you lunch. Well, I ought to go home to the wife. I don't care much for these restaurants, only 4 of them, and they are all bad. Tell you what we'll do. We will get the wife to pack up a lunch for us. She won't charge you more than half a dollar, and it would cost you more than a greasy meal in a restaurant. And we will go up to Wade's Hill and enjoy the view while we eat. So let's see what is happening here. Since the lawyer is hungry, so he suggests that they should go to a restaurant and have some lunch. But the hack driver, he says that he ought to go home at that time. And he says he doesn't care for these restaurants because there are only 4 restaurants in that town and they are all bad. So he gives another suggestion to the lawyer. He says that we will go home and we will have our lunch packed from there. And he says that my wife will not charge more than half a dollar. So he says that this would be not more than what you'll have to pay if you go to a restaurant, and there you'll be paying for greasy and unhealthy meal. So he says after getting our lunch packed, we will go to Wade's Hill and there we will enjoy the view and we will have our lunch also. So let's take the question first. So he says that what suggestion was given by the hack driver to the narrator about having lunch? Why do you think he gave such a suggestion? Now, when the narrator asked Bill to have lunch at a restaurant, Bill negated the idea, saying that there were only 4 restaurants in the town and they were all bad. He suggested that he would ask his wife to pack lunch for them and very cleverly said that she won't charge more than half a dollar. As such, he explained to the narrator that he would be paying much more than that in a restaurant for greasy and unhealthy food. The hack driver was manipulated. He had already made up his mind to extract as much money as he could from the narrator. So he suggested getting lunch packed from his home at a very meager cost of half a dollar. Also, he suspected that someone might reveal his identity at a restaurant to the narrator. So, because of all these reasons, the hack driver suggested this, and he was a manipulator and very cunning. So, he wanted to extract as much money as he could from the lawyer. And lawyer being very innocent, he was not able to understand that what's going on. So, let's see what happens next. I know that Bill's helpfulness to the young fellow from the city was not entirely a matter of brotherly love. I was paying him for his time. In the end, I paid him for 6 hours, including the lunch hour, at what was then a very high price. But he was no more dishonest than I. I charged the whole thing to the firm. But I would have been worth, but it would have been worth paying him myself to have his presence. His cheerful country wisdom was very refreshing to a country boy like myself who was sick of the city. As we sat on the hilltop looking over the pastures and creek which slipped among the trees, he talked of New Mullion and painted a picture in words of all the people in it. He noticed everything, but no matter how much he might laugh at people, he also understood and forgave their foolishness. He described the minister's wife who sang the loudest in the church when she was most in debt. He commented on the boys who came back from college in fancy clothes. He told about the lawyer whose wife could never succeed in getting him to put on both a collar and a tie on the same day. He made them all live. On that day, I came to know New Mullion better than I did the city and to love it better. So, this is the description of their lunch hour when they were sitting and they were having their lunch. So, why did the narrator say that Bill's helpfulness was not entirely a brotherly love? Yes, this first line, when Bill says the narrator, he says that his helpfulness to a young fellow from the city, it was not entirely a matter of brotherly love. The narrator said so because he was aware that he was paying the hack driver for his time. And in the end, he paid him for 6 hours, including the lunch hour and half a dollar for lunch, which was quite a high price for that time. So he says that in the end, obviously, he paid what he had promised, but he says that all this help, it was not out of brotherly love. He was actually being paid for that. But still, he says that he liked Bill. But he was no more dishonest than I. Why did the narrator say so? What did he mean by this? Now, again, at one point, he says that I charged the whole thing to the firm, but it would have been worth paying him myself to have his presence. So, when he says that he was no more dishonest than I, what he meant, the narrator said that Bill was not more dishonest than he was because he charged the whole expenditure of his to the town in visit to the town to find Lutkins to the farm. So all the expenses that he was paying there to Bill or the money that he had paid for lunch, so all that expenses he was going to take back from his firm. He meant that if a Bill was dishonest in charging more money, then he too was dishonest in spending the firm's money like that. So he said that there was not much difference between Bill and him. Now, this is again important when he says that, but it would have been worth paying him myself to have his presence. So, what does the lawyer mean by this? So he means that he felt so delighted in his presence, he laughed with him, was amused to go around the town with him, listen to his philosophy about the country, that he felt that even if he had to pay this fellow from his own pocket, he would not restrain from doing that. He would have loved to do that. So, after that, let's see what happened. Now, how did they spend their lunch hour? So as they sat on the hilltop, looking over the pastures and creek which slipped among the trees, Bill talked of New Mullion and narrated stories about the people who lived there. He noticed everything and he knew everyone. He laughed at the foolishness of the people, but even forgave them. He described the minister's wife who sang the loudest in church when she was most in debt. He commented on the boys who came back from college in fancy clothes. He told about the lawyer whose wife could never succeed in getting him to put on both a collar and a tie on the same day. He made them all live. So, this is how they spent their lunch hour. So, he narrated each and everything in such a way that the lawyer felt that everything was going live in front of his eyes. Now, Bill didn't know about colleges and cities, but he had traveled around a lot of the country. He had had a lot of jobs. From his adventures, he had brought back a philosophy and simplicity of laughter. He strengthened me. So now he says that from his adventures he had brought back philosophy of simplicity and laughter. So what does the narrator or the lawyer mean by this? He means that the narrator has forgotten all this in the rush of the city, and therefore he liked to listen to his talks. So he strengthened me. He strengthened me. It was his cheerful, positive vibes because the narrator, he was very frustrated in the city. So therefore, at that time, he felt strengthened. We left that peaceful scene of meadows and woods and resumed our search for Oliver Lutkins. So after that lunch hour, they again started to look for Oliver Lutkins. We could not find him. At last, Bill cornered a friend of Lutkins and made him admit what he guessed. Oliver's gone out to his mother's farm 3 miles north. So we drove out there laying plans. So they were looking for Lutkins, but they were not able to find him anywhere. And then by chance, they got hold of Lutkin's friend. And that Lutkin's friend, he was when he was forced, he told that, and that was also a guess, that he might have gone to his mother's farm, which was 3 miles in the north. So now both of them they decided to drive to Lutkin's mother's farm, and laying plans means that as they were driving towards the farm, they were planning that how they would catch hold of him there. Okay, so now why did the narrator say that on that day he came to know New Mullion better than the city? What did they find about Lutkins after lunch? So during the lunch hour, Bill made the town live in front of the narrator. He described each and every detail of the town and its people. He shared the foolishness of the people and laughed at them together. The way he sketched New Mullion in front of the narrator, he felt that he knew the town better than the city. And after lunch, they resumed their search for Lutkins, but to no avail. At last, they encountered a friend of Lutkins who guessed that he might have gone to his mother's farm, which was 3 miles away from there in the north. So now we move on to the next page. Now they are heading towards the farm of Lutkin's mother. I know Oliver's mother, she's a terror. Now, on the way, Bill is describing Oliver's mother to the lawyer. So he says that she's a terror. I took a trunk out there for her once, and she almost took my skin off because I didn't treat it like a box of eggs. She is about 9 feet tall and 4 feet thick and quick as a cat. So, this is how he's describing his mother. And then he says that, and sure she can talk. Now, sure she can talk, what it means, we'll be discussing. So he says that I'll bet Oliver heard that somebody is chasing him and he's gone on there to hide behind his mother's skirts. So he's giving his that why Oliver or Lutkins he is there. Well, we will try her. But you'd better let me do it, boy. You may be a great at literature and law, but you haven't had a real training in swearing. So here, on the way he's describing his mother and he describes Oliver's mother as a terror. So he says that he is a very dangerous lady. He gives an example of the trunk that he was taking out for her, and then he warns the lawyer that he should stay away from her. He says that you might be great at literature and law. Literature and law here means that you might be educated, you might be well qualified, but you haven't had real training in swearing. You haven't had real training in swearing means when people start fighting or abusing, so you don't know how to deal with them. So, what did the hack driver tell the narrator about Oliver's mother? Or what reason did the hack driver give to the narrator for talking to Oliver's mother first? So Bill told that Oliver's mother was a terror. She was a huge lady, about 9 feet tall and 4 feet thick, and quick like a cat, and very quarrelsome. He even narrated one incident when he took out a trunk for her, but she was almost after his life for not treating the trunk carefully like a box of eggs. So he warned the narrator not to go near her and let him do the talking. So because of these reasons, he told the lawyer that you stay away from her. So, what reason did the hack driver give to the narrator for Lutkins going to his mother's farm? The hack driver told the narrator that he was sure that Oliver must have heard that somebody was chasing him, and therefore he had gone to his mother's farm to hide behind his mother's skirts. Now, when they reached there, they say that we drove to the poor farmyard. We were faced by an enormous and cheerful old woman. My guide bravely went up to her and said, "Remember me? I'm Bill Magnuson, the carter and hackman. I want to find your son Oliver." So when they reached there, Bill went to the lady and there he said that if she recognized him. So my guide bravely went up. So my guide here, he's talking about Bill, the hack driver. So the mother answered, "I don't know anything about Oliver, and I don't want to," she shouted. So rather, the lady shouted at them and said that she didn't know about her son and she even did not want to know about him. Now, look here. We have had just enough nonsense. This young man represents the court in the city, and we have a legal right to search all properties for this Oliver Lutkins. So Bill announced there that this young man, pointing towards the lawyer, he had come from the city with court orders, and they had the legal right to search all the properties of Oliver Lutkins if they are not able to find him. So Bill made me sound very important. So at that time, the lawyer he felt like an important man. So the woman was impressed. She retired into the kitchen and we followed. She seized an iron from the old-fashioned stove and marched on us shouting, "You search all you want to, if you don't mind getting burnt first." She shouted and laughed at our frightened retreat. So the woman, she retired into the kitchen, and Bill and the lawyer, they felt that she had gone inside to bring Lutkins, or she had gone inside so that they can search the house. But instead, she went into the kitchen and she brought out a hot or iron rod, and she shouted at them that if they want to search the house, they should first risk getting burnt. So she shouted and she laughed as both of them they stepped back. So let's do this question first. How did Oliver's mother treat the narrator and the hack driver when they asked about Oliver? So when the hack driver and the narrator reached the farm, they were faced by an enormous and cheerful woman. When they asked her about Lutkins, she said that she didn't know anything about him. When the hack driver pressurized her by threatening court orders and their legal right to search the property, she went inside and seized an iron rod from a stove and pointing towards them shouted that they should be ready to get burnt first before searching the house. Both the hack driver and the narrator stepped back, fearing getting burnt. Thus, they were treated in a very disrespectful way. So the mother of Oliver, she shouted at them and she pointed a hot iron rod towards them, and both Bill and the lawyer, they stepped back. "Let's get out of here. She'll murder us," Bill whispered. Outside, he said, "Did you see her smile? She was laughing at us." So, since the woman was laughing at them, they felt very humiliated. I agreed that it was pretty disrespectful treatment. We did, however, search the house. Since it was only 1 story high, Bill went round it, peering in at all the windows. We examined the barn and stable. We were reasonably certain that Lutkins was not there. It was nearly time for me to catch the afternoon train, and Bill drove me to the station. So while they were coming out, hurriedly they searched the house. They looked inside the house through every window. So how was the house searched, and were they able to find Lutkins there? After they were scared out of the house by Lutkin's mother, Bill quickly went round the house since it was only 1 story high. He peered in at all the windows, but no luck. They then examined the barn and stable, but Lutkins was nowhere to be found. So they tried to search the house. They looked inside the house through every window, even the barn and the stable, but they were not able to find Lutkins. So now, by that time, it was afternoon time of the train, and so Bill drove the lawyer to the station. On the way to the city, I worried very little about my failure to find Lutkin. So now the lawyer, he is in the train and he is thinking about his visit. So he says, I was too busy thinking about Bill Magnuson. Really, I considered returning to New Million to practice law. If I had found Bill so deep and richly human, might I not grow to love Fritz and Gustav and 100 other slow-spoken, simple, wise neighbors? I pictured an honest and happy life beyond the strict limits of universities and law firms. I was excited. I had found a treasure. I had discovered a new way of life. So this is important. What was going on through in his mind as he was sitting in the train on his way back to the city? So the narrator returned to the city as an impressed man. Who had impressed him? What plan was going on in his mind, and why was he excited? So the narrator returned to the city as an impressed man. He was quite influenced by Bill Magnuson. His warmth, cheerful nature, helpful attitude, and country philosophy had quite touched him. So all these things of Bill he liked very much. So he planned to return to New Mullion to practice law. So in his mind he had already decided that he would be returning to that place and he would be doing his practice there. He felt that if he had liked Bill so much for his virtues, he ought to like others like Fritz and Gustav and many hundreds of simple, slow spoken, and wise neighbors. So he feels that if he had started liking Bill for his virtues, then he will also like Fritz and Gustav and many other people in the town slowly and slowly with time. So he says that he was very excited to picture an honest, simple, and happy life there, away from the strict and competitive city life. He felt as if he found a treasure and discovered a new way of life. So a question can even come that why does he say that he has found a treasure or that he had discovered a new way of life? So it can question can come in any form, but this is the answer. So next let's read what happens. But if I did not think much about Lutkins, the office did. I found them all upset. Next morning, the case was coming up in the court and they had to have Lutkins. I was shameful, useless fool. So that morning, my promising legal career almost came to an end before it had begun. So, in the city, obviously, when he reached his office, the next morning the case was to go in the court and they did not have the witness. So, obviously, the people there in the office they treated him like a fool. So, he felt useless there. So, what happened with the narrator the next morning in the office? What made him feel sorry? Next morning, when he reached the office, everyone was upset. He felt like a shameful and useless fool. His promising legal career had almost ended that morning. His chief mocked at him and said that he might try his hands at digging ditches. So everyone was upset. They were thinking that he was a fool. He could not bring even one man, Oliver Lutkins, which was so important for the case. And the narrator felt that his promising legal career had almost ended before it could have begun. So the chief almost murdered me. He hinted that I might do well at digging ditches. I was ordered back to New Mullion, and with me went a man who had worked with Lutkin. So now, second time they ordered that he should go and he should bring that man, but now, second time, another person went with him who knew Oliver Lutkins, who had worked with Oliver Lutkins. So he says that I was rather sorry because it would prevent my loafing all over again with Bill. So again, the narrator, he was not much more concerned that he had to bring Lutkins, but He was thinking that he would go back and he would enjoy another day with Bill. When the train arrived at New Mullion, Bill was on the station platform near his cart. Strangely enough, that old tigress, Lutkins' mother, was there talking and laughing with Bill, not quarrelling at all. So now, second time, when the narrator reached there, there was a strange scene at the station that welcomed him. So let's read the question. What was that strange scene? So, what strange scene welcomed the narrator at the station when he reached there for the second time? The narrator was once again sent to New Mullion to look for Lutkins. But this time, a man who had worked with Lutkins before was sent along. When the train reached the station, he saw Bill at the station. The strange thing to note was that Bill was very comfortably talking to Lutkins' mother. They were laughing and not at all quarreling with each other. So this was very strange for the narrator to understand that why Bill was talking to that lady in such a comfortable manner. So then he says that from the train steps I pointed Bill out to my companion and said, "There's a fine fellow, a real man. I spent the day with him." So the man who had come with the lawyer this time, so the lawyer pointing towards Bill said that, "Look, there's the man, there, he's the man I was talking about. He's a very nice person, the real man actually." And he says that I spent the whole day with him. And he helped you hunt for Oliver Lutkins. So the companion asked that, "Okay, so you mean to say that he helped you hunt for Lutkins?" So the lawyer said, "Yes, he helped me a lot." So the other man said, "Yes, he must have because he himself is Lutkins." So this comes as a jolt to the lawyer that he himself was Lutkins and he had taken him round and round the town throughout the day. And obviously, how could they have found Lutkins? So, what really, he says, hurt me was that when I served the summons, Lutkins and his mother laughed at me as though I were a bright boy of 7. So he says that when I handed them the papers of the summons, the both of them they started laughing at me. With loving kindness, they begged me to go with them to a neighbor's house for a cup of coffee. "I told them about you and they're anxious to look at you," said Lutkins joyfully. So Lutkins, he was making fun of the narrator. He says that I told your story to one of my neighbors and he said that he wanted to see the man whom I could befool so easily. So he says that if he could only come with him to that neighbor's house for a coffee. So he says that they are about the only folks in the town that missed seeing you yesterday. So he says that is the only house. They are the only persons who did not see you yesterday. So that is why they are forcing me to bring you to their house so that they can see the man. So obviously this was very humiliating for the lawyer as he had not expected that someone whom he is trusting so much would do something like this with him. So why was the narrator hurt? The narrator was hurt because he had put all his faith in Bill. When he served summons on to Lutkins, he and his mother they laughed at him as if he were a boy of 7. They begged him to go with them to their neighbor's house for a cup of coffee. As the neighbors, they were very anxious to have a look at the fellow who was duped by Lutkins. Now let's take the next one. Do you think Lutkins cared about the narrator's feelings? No, not at all, obviously. If he had cared about the narrator's feelings, he would not have laughed at him when they met for the second time. He would not have made him a laughing stock in the town. Do you think the narrator planned to come back to New Million to practice law after the truth was revealed to him? No, the narrator would never even dream to go to New Million to practice law after the truth was revealed to him. His trust was broken by Lutkins, who just wanted to have a good time at the cost of the narrator. Lutkins made him look like a fool in front of the people of the town. So, because of these reasons, now he would never think of going to New Million to start his practice. Now we'll discuss the theme of the chapter. Now, theme of the chapter, it is very, very important. Now, since we have finished the chapter, so I will enlarge this view so that the theme is clearly visible to you. So let's enlarge it. Yes. So discuss the theme of the chapter. It is an amusing tale highlighting the frustration of a well qualified lawyer who is a misfit in the competitiveness of the city and an illiterate, cunning manipulator for whom life is a joyride. So these are the two characters. So one character who is well qualified lawyer, he is working in the city in a magnificent firm, but he is frustrated. He is a misfit in the competitiveness of the city, and on the other side, there is an illiterate, cunning manipulator for whom life is a joyride. The theme, appearances are often deceptive, runs throughout the story. So, obviously, it was the first impression of the lawyer. So, the first impression, of the hack driver on the lawyer, and because of that impression, the lawyer was not able to suspect throughout one day that he spent with the hack driver. Not even once he suspected that the hack driver was fooling him. So the qualifications of the lawyer is no certificate for his worldly wisdom, as he is not able to recognize the cunningness of the hack driver, whom he meets for the first time at the station. So he meets this man for the first time and he shares with him all his important information. He shares important information with a complete stranger and thus ends up looking like a fool. The story also highlights how being a little mindful and alert on the part of a lawyer would have saved him from all the trouble, whereas on the other side, the alertness and sharp wit of the hack driver saves him from the same trouble, even if for a day, and gives him a chance to enjoy at the cost of the lawyer. So, this is the theme. The theme is that there is on one side a qualified lawyer who is frustrated, but he is very simple and he is naive to understand the cunning nature of the hack driver. So uh, he looks at Bill on the station for the first time and he thinks that he's a very nice man, very kind and helpful, and Bill also portrays like that to him. Therefore, the lawyer is taken in and he shares all his important information with him, and because of that, he gets into trouble and he ends up looking like a fool. So the story it also highlights that if the lawyer had been a little mindful, a little alert, so all this trouble he could have saved himself from all this trouble. But on the other hand, the same alertness, the sharp wit of the hack driver saves him from the same trouble, even if he has saved himself for one day, because the next day they again come and they serve this summons on him, but he also gets a chance to enjoy at the cost of the lawyer. So obviously, whatever happened, hack driver, he was in a more stronger position than the lawyer. So this is the theme, and along with this, the whole explanation of the chapter is done, along with all the important questions that could come from each page. Now, the questions, the form of the question, it can differ, but obviously, if you have done all these 30 questions, you can make answers automatically because they will be related to these questions only. The words they can change, the form of the question can change, but obviously the questions they will revolve around this only. So now these are the topics of grammar and writing portion that I've already covered. I'll be adding more topics, more examples, and if you want to check on any of these, I'll be sharing the links in the description box. And this is the literature portion that has already been done. If you haven't watched part 1 of the hack driver, I am giving the link in the description box. But before that, kindly subscribe to my channel and show your support. If you've liked the explanation, kindly give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends also so that this channel can grow and I'm able to help as many students as is possible. That's for today. Thank you very much and be with me so that we can keep on revising till the final exams. All the best.